Why did the courtyard suddenly go quiet when she stepped off the truck? Sarah Martinez could feel the weight of every stair pressing against her back as her boots sank into the gravel of Naval Special Warfare Training Facility. The sun was brutal, beating down in sharp, merciless light that left no shadow to hide beneath. She adjusted the strap of her gear bag and forced her breathing into a calm rhythm. Calm on the outside, even if her pulse betrayed her within. It wasn't the first time she had been the only woman in a room full of soldiers, but this time was different. These weren't regular soldiers. These were men who already carried reputations, who had been tested in ways that broke others, and she could hear their whispers without even trying. "What's she doing here?" one voice said. "This isn't a place for girls," another, followed by a low chuckle. Sarah kept her expression flat, her jaw tight. If she reacted to every insult, every dismissive glance, she would waste the energy she needed just to survive here. She had learned that lesson long ago, back in Ranger School, back on dusty roads in Afghanistan, where some of her own teammates had doubted her until they saw her bleed beside them. 8 years of service, 2 deployments, a Ranger tab, she had earned her place. And yet here, among this sea of muscle and swagger, she had to start all over again. The air smelled like salt from the Pacific, mixed with sweat, oil, and the faint metallic tang of weapons that never sat untouched for long. The facility stretched wide across the coast, obstacle courses, shooting ranges, tactical buildings. A place designed to crush the unprepared. She knew it. She welcomed it. "Listen up." The voice cracked across the courtyard like a whip. Every candidate snapped into attention as Chief Petty Officer Mike strode forward. His arms carried stories in tattoos, deployments, victories, scars. His eyes were colder than steel, the kind of cold that comes only from seeing death too many times and walking back from it. He scanned the line, paused, his gaze locked onto her. He didn't speak her name. He didn't need to. The narrowing of his eyes said enough. He had noticed the anomaly. "Welcome to hell," said evenly. "For the next 4 weeks you'll learn advanced combat skills. Half of you won't make it through the first week. The other half will wish you hadn't." Boots ground into the gravel as he paced in front of them. "I don't care what unit you came from or how many pretty ribbons you wear. Here, you start from zero. You prove yourself every day, or you're gone." Sarah kept her eyes fixed forward, still, listening, every syllable drilled into her chest like a hammer. "Move," ordered, gesturing toward a large building behind him. The group jogged as one mass. Sarah matched the pace exactly, not too fast, not too slow. But the weight she carried wasn't only from her pack. It was the invisible weight of every expectation, every doubt cast upon her before she even had the chance to fail. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed. The air smelled sharp like leather mats and solvent. The walls were lined with weapons, rifles, pistols, knives, rubber training blades. It looked sterile, clinical, like a place where science met violence. "Drop gear," 3 lines barked. Sarah found herself surrounded by men towering over her 5'6" frame. It didn't matter. She wasn't here to blend in. "Hand-to-hand combat is the foundation," began. "When your weapon fails, when you're cornered, when everything else falls apart, your body is your weapon." He gestured toward another instructor, tall and lean, with the smooth confidence of a fighter who had drilled every motion into muscle memory. "This is Petty Officer, demonstrating proper takedown techniques. I need a volunteer." Hands shot up instantly, but's eyes cut through the room like a blade, landing on her. Martinez, front and center. She stepped forward, hearing the whispers rise again behind her. Skepticism, doubt, laughter barely suppressed. She ignored them. Gave her a small smile, the kind of smile that said he expected this to be quick, maybe even funny. He took his stance, textbook clean. She mirrored it, calm, waiting. "The key to any takedown," said, "is understanding center of gravity." Moved in, reaching for her uniform. A hip toss, standard, exactly what he would teach beginners. But Sarah wasn't a beginner. Martial arts had been part of her life since she was 12. Reading an opponent's intent in the flick of an eye or the tightening of a shoulder had become instinct. In that sliver of a second she saw the opening, stepped sideways, seized his arm and pulled. Fluid, precise. His body lifted, weightless for a heartbeat, before slamming into the mat with a sound that echoed through the hall. Silence. Stared up at the ceiling, eyes wide, stunned. The entire room froze, men who had expected a spectacle now trapped in disbelief. Sarah extended her hand, steady, respectful. He took it, cheeks flushed, and rose. From the corner of her vision she saw something shift in his eyes, just slightly, but it was there. "Well," said at last, his voice slicing through the quiet, "that was unexpected." The air had changed. She felt it in the way the others looked at her now, confusion tangled with a hint of respect. Not all, not yet, but some. "Martinez," said, folding his arms. "Decent counter, but luck only gets you so far. Sit. Martinez, stay." Sarah knew what this was. A test, not just of skill, but of endurance, composure, credibility. Stepped behind her, his voice calm, instructive. Bear hug escape, larger opponent, stronger, arms trapped. His arms wrapped around her, firm, locking her in place. She could feel the sheer power coiled in his body. He wasn't using full strength, but he didn't need to. He could crush her if he wanted. "Most panic," he said, his voice near her ear. "Most fight against strength. That's when they lose." Sarah stilled. Her breath slowed. She could hear the other candidates shifting, shaking heads, silently wagering on how quickly she would fail. She didn't fight the grip. Instead, she thought about leverage, about anatomy. She drove her heel into his foot, hard. At the same time, she threw her head back toward his face, forcing his grip to loosen. In that heartbeat, she seized his wrist, dropped low, and spun. Free. Caught her again, faster this time. Another hold, testing. She countered. Arm drag. He stumbled forward. The room filled with murmurs now, disbelief mounting. It wasn't just a demonstration anymore. It was chess. His experience against her instinct, his size against her precision. Each motion deliberate, measured, increasing in intensity. By the time raised his hands, signaling an end, sweat slicked her forehead. Her chest rose and fell, but her eyes remained steady. He studied her, and for the first time, respect flickered plain in his gaze. "Outstanding technique, Martinez," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She nodded once, not triumphant, not smug, just steady. And then came the knife. Retrieved a rubber training blade from the rack, holding it in combat grip. The room tightened with anticipation. A blade, even fake, changed everything. "Most focus on the weapon," said. "That's how they lose." He lunged. Time slowed. Her world narrowed to his wrist, the shift in his stance, the angle of his lunge. She stepped aside, seized his arm, struck the nerve cluster, twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. And suddenly she was standing there, weapon disarmed, restrained. Silence. Every single candidate stared, unable to deny what they had seen. Chief looked down at the blade, looked back at her, and smiled. "That," he announced, "is how it's done." The tension in the room shifted. Some eyes now held respect. Others, hostility sharpened into something uglier. She saw them, 3 men in particular, one built like a wall of muscle, his jaw tight, whispering to his companions. This wasn't over. When dismissed the class for lunch, Sarah gathered her gear quietly. Her hands were steady, but inside she could feel the storm. Today she had made herself visible, too visible. Credibility earned, but also a target painted squarely on her back. And the day wasn't done yet. White's eyes followed her across the dining hall. Sarah balanced her tray, scanning the room. The cafeteria buzzed with voices, forks scraping against metal trays, boots shifting under long wooden tables. But beneath the surface chatter she could feel it, the lines already being drawn. Some looked at her with curiosity, a few with quiet respect, and others with suspicion sharpened into contempt. She chose carefully, not the hostile corners, not the groups that would close ranks the moment she sat. She slipped into a seat near, and William's men who had watched her earlier without the sneers. "That was some serious technique this morning," said between bites of sandwich. His voice carried no sarcasm, only interest. "Where'd you learn that?" "Army Rangers," she said simply. 8 years, 2 deployments, a lot of training along the way. Raised his brows. "Rangers, that's no joke." Williams leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You know some guys here won't want you to succeed, right?" She met his eyes steadily. "I figured as much." He shook his head. "No, I mean really won't want you to. These guys, some of them have been through hell together. Combat, blood, funerals. They've built something like family. They might think you being here threatens that. Or proves it's not as unshakable as they tell themselves," added quietly. Sarah let the words sit. She had faced this before, but here the stakes felt different, sharper. From across the room sat with 2 others, heads bent together, their whispers cut short whenever her eyes drifted near. She didn't need to hear the words to know what they were planning. Noticed her glance. "Looks like your afternoon might get interesting." "Every afternoon should be interesting," she said calmly, rising with her tray. "That's why we're here." But inside, her chest tightened. She could feel it. The weight of being tested wasn't over. The first round had only lit the fuse. The team tactics classroom was stark, long tables pushed aside, walls lined with whiteboards and tactical maps. Handed folders to each group. His tone carried authority, but his eyes held something else when they landed on Sarah, a silent reminder. "Prove yourself again." "Scenario 1, hostage rescue," he announced. 3 armed suspects, 2 civilian hostages, mock building behind the facility. Plan your approach, execute, then justify your choices. You'll be judged on communication, execution, and tactical decision-making. Sarah's group assembled, and of course, the tension was immediate. Jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid, as if the very idea of sharing space with her was an insult. They spread out the floor plan, took lead. 3 entry points, front door, back door, east side window. Intelligence says 3 suspects. Likely 1 watching front, 1 covering hostages, 1 mobile. The front's too obvious. "The window gives us the angle," Sarah added, tracing the plan with her finger. Finally spoke, his tone sharp. "That's a lot of assumptions. We don't know positions for sure." "You're right," Sarah said evenly. "But we have to base decisions on likely scenarios. What would you recommend?" He blinked, surprised she'd asked. "Multi-point entry, window and back door synchronized breach, overwhelm them." Nodded. "Martinez and I take the window, you and the back, we coordinate." "Why does she get point?" Tone carried a challenge now, not curiosity. Hesitated. "Because she demonstrated this morning she's got CQB skills." "So do I, so does everyone here. That doesn't make her team lead." The air thickened, shifted uncomfortably, glanced at Sarah. The moment stretched, waiting for the spark. Sarah's voice cut through, calm but firm. "You're right. Skills don't make leadership automatic. If you think you should take point, make your case." The words caught him off guard. He had expected defiance, maybe even arrogance, not dialogue. "I've done 6 hostage rescues in real combat," he said after a pause, pride leaking into his tone. Sarah nodded. "That's valuable. I've done 4. What did you learn from those missions that applies here?" Again she twisted the confrontation into something else. Not submission, not dominance, something more dangerous, respect. "Speed and violence of action," he said after a beat. "You overwhelm them before they can think." She gave a small nod. "Agreed. So how do we maximize speed while keeping both teams in sync?" Stepped in, predetermined timing. No radio chatter, we move like clockwork. For the next 10 minutes, tension melted into focus. Plans formed, details sharpened. And when they breached Sarah and through the window and through the back, it was near perfect. Hostages secured, suspects neutralized, no casualties. From the control booth, watched with careful eyes. When they regrouped, he only gave a nod. Good execution, mission accomplished. But Sarah noticed the flicker in his gaze as it passed over her. Approval, quiet, controlled. Fell into step beside her afterward, his voice low just for her. You handled that well. She looked at him, surprised. The discussion, he clarified. Most would gotten defensive, you didn't. There wasn't rank to pull, she said. We're all here to learn. He studied her for a moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then let me ask you, you're not here as a statement, not here to prove a point. I'm here because I want to be the best soldier I can be, nothing more. His expression softened slightly, not friendliness, not yet, but something closer to respect. That evening gathered the candidates. The sun had begun to fall, shadows stretching across the compound. Today was about baselines, he said. I've seen what you can do alone and in small groups. Tomorrow we start the real work. The words dropped heavy. Everyone shifted, knowing what real work meant. This isn't just about technique, he continued. It's about learning to work with people who aren't like you, different backgrounds, different experiences. If you can't learn to work with everyone in this room, then you don't belong here, period. Eyes flicked toward her, not all but enough. She didn't react. Later, walking across the compound, her body sore, her thoughts heavier, Sarah reflected on the quiet truth of his words. Technical skill wasn't enough. She knew it. Trust mattered more. And trust was the very thing she had to claw for, inch by inch. Tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow would demand more than just counters and takedowns. Tomorrow would decide whether respect could grow roots or whether hostility would win. She lay awake that night, listening to the slow rhythm of the barracks breathing. Around her, men dreamed of battles past or battles to come. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. She wasn't here to make history. She wasn't here to prove a cause. She was here to become more than she had been yesterday. And in the silence before dawn, that felt like enough. The alarm clock read 4:30 when her eyes opened. Instinct, not necessity. She had always risen early, carving out minutes of quiet before the chaos. Stretching, breathing, meditation, anchors in storms. By the time appeared in the doorway, steaming mug in hand, she was already moving through her routine. You're up early, he said quietly. Yes, Chief, personal habit. He studied her for a moment. Good, I like soldiers who don't need dragging out of bed. He took a sip, his eyes never leaving her. How are you finding the program? Challenging but fair. And the social dynamics. She paused, he wasn't asking lightly. Exactly what I expected, she said. Set his mug down, sat across from her. The skills we teach matter, but they're not the most important thing. Trust is. These men need to know you'll hold when everything falls apart. I understand. Do you? His eyes narrowed. It's not about drills in controlled rooms. It's about bullets, screams, lives. Do you understand that kind of trust? She held his gaze, silent, and maybe that silence said more than words. Movement stirred from the barracks as others began to rise. Drained his coffee, stood. Today we'll push everyone to their limits. Physical, mental, emotional. Some will break. Others will learn who they really are. And then he was gone, leaving his words behind like a shadow. Formation stood sharp in the chill morning air. Breath fogged. Boots crunched. Appeared flanked by two new instructors, one and-weathered, the other a woman with the kind of presence that didn't need words. Barked, the word stung, but she let it pass. Today is stress inoculation. 12 hours, teams of 8. Physical challenges, tactical problems, psychological pressure. Some of you will discover you're not as tough as you think. Master Chief Harrison stepped forward. His voice was rough gravel. You'll march, you'll fight, you'll solve problems when your bodies want to collapse, and if you fail, the whole team fails. Beside him, Petty Officer Santos added, "Each of you will carry a 20-pound ammo can. You cannot set it down. You cannot pass it off. These represent mission-critical supplies. Lose them and you lose everything." Sarah hefted the can when it was handed to her. 20 pounds, not much alone, but 10 miles of it, under time pressure, it would burn like fire. And Harrison added, his lips curling in a smile that wasn't a smile, "Your route includes tactical problems along the way. Fail one, you all fail." The candidates shifted uneasily. Sarah's eyes swept her new team. 5 others she hadn't worked with closely yet, 8 bodies, 8 lives, bound by one rule: no one falls behind. "Team 3, Harrison called. "Your first challenge begins now." They exchanged quick glances, shouldered loads, and started moving. The gravel crunched under boots. The weight pressed shoulders raw, and already Sarah felt the familiar burn building in her legs. But she didn't falter. She knew the truth. This wasn't just about miles. It was about proving she wouldn't be the one they left behind. Not today, not ever. How much farther could they push before someone broke? The march had only just begun, yet Sarah felt the strain set in with an almost cruel immediacy. Full combat load biting into her shoulders. A 20-pound ammo can gripped in her hand like a block of iron that grew heavier with each step. 10 miles stretched ahead of them. 10 miles at an aggressive time standard, Harrison had said, which meant misery, which meant no weakness. The team moved as one line across the dirt trail, boots pounding in rhythm. Set a steady pace, his eyes flicking to his watch every few minutes. Was focused, silent, his jaw clenched. Others kept their heads down, their breaths growing louder, more ragged. And beside her carried his load without complaint, his broad frame built for punishment. Sarah forced her body into rhythm, focusing on the sound of her boots, the steady intake of breath, the feel of grit between her teeth. She knew the secret wasn't strength. It was surrender. Not to the pain, but to the rhythm of it. Find the cadence, ride it, endure. By mile 3, the first tactical challenge emerged, a mock roadblock. Role players with rifles blocked the path, their postures aggressive. The scenario demanded a plan, quick, clear, and disciplined. The team huddled for seconds only, flanking maneuver, silent approach, overwhelm fast, secure ammo cans, no one left exposed. Exhaustion fought them, but they moved like a single organism, sweeping around, striking the role players from 2 sides. The mock threat folded. They regrouped and moved on, cans still clutched tight, legs still burning. Sarah's lungs pulled sharp air. Sweat slicked her temples, dripping into her eyes, and when she looked left, she caught Johnson, big, broad Johnson, already slowing, his limp obvious, his chest heaving. By mile 6, the cracks widened. Johnson's breathing rattled, his face pale. Normally quick had fallen to the rear, sweat pouring from him, steps faltering. "We need to slow down," Sarah whispered too. "We'll lose them." "If we slow, we miss the time standard," muttered. "If we don't, we lose them anyway," Sarah countered. Made the call, stay together, no exceptions. They couldn't redistribute the ammo cans. That was the rule. But Sarah improvised. She shifted beside Johnson, slipped her free hand under the strap of his combat pack, and lifted just enough weight to steady his steps. It was awkward, it hurt, but it kept him moving. Watched for a moment, then moved to side, shouldering part of his burden in silence. And slowly, step by step, they endured. At mile 8, the second tactical problem hit like a hammer. A simulated minefield stretched before them, marked by wires and flags. Sniper fire cracked from hidden speakers, forcing them low, pressing the reality of death into their minds. The ammo cans made it worse. They couldn't crawl. They had to maneuver upright, exposed, moving carefully, covering one another with bursts of fire while navigating the danger zone. Sarah felt adrenaline sharpen her senses. She took point on coordination, her voice calm but commanding. 2 move, 2 cover, shift, rotate. Her smaller frame made weaving through the markers easier. She guided others, shouted warnings when boots drifted too close to tripwires. They moved like chess pieces, calculated and precise, until the last man crossed. Relief came in a breath, but only for a moment. The march pressed on. By mile 10, bodies screamed for relief. Shoulders raw, hips bruised. Every heartbeat a reminder that limits were not physical, they were mental. And when the finish line appeared, marked by instructors and a cold stopwatch, the team surged forward with the last scraps of strength they had left. They crossed together, no one left behind. Harrison's expression revealed nothing, but Santos gave a rare nod. Standard met, all accounted for. Sarah bent slightly, her hands on her knees, letting her lungs fight for air. Sweat rolled off her chin, but inside there was something else. Not pride, not yet, but proof. She hadn't been the liability, she had been the support, and some had seen it. 15 minutes. That was all the rest they were given before the second phase. The facility loomed ahead, built like a labyrinth. Corridors, stairwells, darkened rooms, a simulated urban battlefield. Santos's voice was sharp. Inside, high-value targets, hostile forces, civilians mixed in. Protect innocents, neutralize threats, secure objectives. Fail one condition, you all fail. Harrison's gravelly tone followed. Sensors will track hits. If you're killed, you're out. Too many dead, mission fails. Sarah checked her gear, tightening straps, feeling the nerves kick in. This was where things shifted. This wasn't just endurance. This was judgment. One wrong trigger pull, one hesitation, one mistake, and failure would be written in red across their sensors. The team divided into fire groups, took right with 3. Sarah took left with Williams and Johnson. The building swallowed them whole. Dim light, echoing footsteps, voices, some hostile, some panicked, civilians playing their roles with fear that felt real. Every corner carried tension, every door hid danger. The first floor cleared fast, civilians rescued, secured. No shots fired. Then the call came through the radio's voice, contact second floor. Gunfire cracked. The simulation echoed like real rounds snapping off walls. Sarah signaled her team, pushing them toward the stairwell. She halted at the threshold, raising a fist. Something felt wrong, a sound beneath the chaos, a faint, broken sob. Possible civilian, she whispered. She moved carefully, weapon raised, eyes cutting through shadows. And there, a young woman pinned under debris, crying out for help. Sarah called Williams to assist, covering as they freed her. The role player's voice trembled with convincing fear. My leg, I can't move. They pulled her out, guided her to safety, but time bled away, and in that delay the enemy adjusted. The ambush came like a storm. Gunfire burst as they advanced. Johnson went down instantly, his sensor flashing red. The rest dove for cover, rounds slamming into walls. Multiple shooters, Sarah shouted. Johnson down. His voice hit the radio. Hold position, we're coming. But Sarah's instincts screamed. Staying pinned was death. The ambush was designed to trap, not kill quickly. Negative, she snapped. We're pushing through. She didn't wait, she led. Aggression became survival. They surged forward, fire disciplined, clearing the attackers in a violent burst. 2 enemies down, the line cracked open. His team swept in, pressure doubled, and within minutes the second floor was theirs. But the cost was written on their sensors. Johnson gone. Down. 6 left. The third floor loomed. Intelligence said the high-value targets were there, but Sarah's eyes read the walls, the layout, the silence. She knew the defenders had dug in, knew a frontal stairwell assault was suicide. There's another way, she said quickly too. Emergency stairs, east side, he confirmed, pointing at the schematic. Sarah nodded. Split force. 3 up, fire escape, 3 through the front, split their attention. Looked doubtful. That divides us. It divides them more, she countered. Seconds ticked away. Decisions carved futures. "Execute," he agreed. Sarah and Williams climbed the fire escape, boots clanging softly on steel. Below, they heard team launch their frontal push, gunfire erupting like thunder. Sarah reached the third-floor window, peering inside. Defenders focused on the stairs, weapons fixed. She could see the hostages cornered, guarded, vulnerable. "Team in position," she whispered. "Frontal engaged," came's reply. "Execute." She kicked the window in. Chaos followed. Her team stormed in from the flank as pushed from the front. Hostiles split, confused, overwhelmed. Simulated gunfire cut the air. Sensors blinked red. Dropped, too. But Williams stood, Murphy stood, fought like a wall. And when it ended, Sarah was still upright, wounded but alive. 2 hostages secure, civilians unharmed. Mission complete. Harrison and Santos entered, clipboards in hand. "Mission accomplished," Harrison said flatly. "Acceptable casualties, high-value targets secured." But Santos's words cut deeper. What mattered more was cohesion. You held together, you adapted, that's what makes a team. Sarah's body sagged with exhaustion, but her heart carried something else. Proof, once again, that she belonged. As the team packed up, approached her quietly, his expression unreadable, his voice low. "You were right about the split." She met his gaze, steady. "Doesn't mean I trust you yet," he added, "but it means I'll listen next time." And in that quiet admission, Sarah felt the faintest flicker of what had said that morning. Trust, not given, not automatic, but earned. One choice, one risk, one moment at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Why did the compound feel different after the exercise? Sarah noticed it in the way people walked past her, not ignoring her anymore, not entirely dismissing her, but studying her, measuring her. Some eyes had softened, replaced with a hint of recognition. Others had hardened into sharper edges of hostility. Respect came slow in places like this. And sometimes respect wasn't admiration. It was calculation. That night she lay in her bunk, exhaustion flooding her body but sleep refusing to come. She replayed the day's scenarios, the choices, the risks. She could still hear Johnson's voice just before he went down in the ambush, the sound of the simulation rounds cracking against walls, the faint cry of the role-playing civilian calling for help. Every detail clung to her mind like sweat that wouldn't dry. When sleep finally dragged her under, it came with images she couldn't control: Afghanistan's dust, her squad pinned down under fire, the gut-twisting memory of waiting for medevac that never came fast enough. She woke before dawn, chest tight, throat dry, gripping her blanket as if it were a lifeline. Another day, another test. Morning formation cut sharp lines against the rising sun. Boots aligned, faces hard, breath clouding in the cool California air. Chief stood in front of them, arms behind his back, the picture of calm authority. But his words carried weight that promised no calm at all. "Yesterday showed me you can execute under stress," he said. "Today, we see who can adapt when the ground shifts under you. Because in combat, the ground always shifts." Behind him, instructors wheeled out crates, weapons, gear, packs heavier than the day before. The candidates straightened, bracing themselves for whatever storm was about to break. "Today," continued, "is endurance under chaos. You'll run, you'll fight, you'll think when your brain wants to shut down. And when you want to quit, you'll keep moving. Because combat doesn't care if you're tired." The teams formed quickly. Sarah found herself with again Williams and 3 men she hadn't worked with closely before, was assigned elsewhere. A relief maybe, or maybe not. They shouldered their loads and began the day with a forced run across uneven terrain, hills that cut calves to fire, sand that dragged at boots, ocean spray stinging eyes as they moved along the shoreline. Sarah locked into her rhythm, breathe, step, grip, Every muscle screamed, but she focused on something else: the sound of the ocean, the cold wind, the reminder that pain was temporary, but quitting left scars that never healed. When they finally halted, lungs burning, Harrison's voice cut the air. Two-man fire teams, immediate assault course, go. The candidates split, dragging themselves toward the obstacle field. Walls, cargo nets, barbed wire low enough to scrape if you lifted your head too high. Simulated explosions shook the ground, smoke curling through the air, obscuring vision. Sarah dropped low, crawling under wire, her ammo can clutched like it was her last possession. Her knees bled against gravel, her elbows burned, but she kept moving. Every inch forward was defiance, every scrape proof. Williams shouted behind her, his voice strained, "Keep going." They vaulted walls, dragged each other over barriers, shoved through tunnels barely wide enough to breathe in. Sweat mixed with dirt until everyone looked the same, stripped of individuality, shaped into something. At the course's end, they regrouped, gasping, mud-streaked. But there was no pause, no reprieve. Santos's voice cracked over them. CQB drills, immediate. They entered a mock village, plywood walls, open courtyards, staircases that led to nowhere. Role players screamed from windows, some hostile, some civilian. The confusion was deliberate, meant to split attention, to punish hesitation. "Clear left," Sarah shouted as she pie-sliced through a doorway, weapon raised. Her partner followed, nerves taut as wire. Gunfire cracked, simulation rounds biting into walls. She dropped low, firing controlled bursts, her sensor recording hits. One hostile down. Another surged from the corner, weapon raised. Instinct pulled her forward, step inside his arc, strike his wrist, disarm. The rubber rifle clattered. For a second her heart leapt, not triumph but survival. Outside, chaos roared. Other teams clashed with role players, voices overlapping, commands half lost in noise. Sarah forced herself to focus, to drown out everything but the small bubble of her own team. When the drill ended, his voice pulled them back. "Half of you moved like operators, half moved like amateurs. Ask yourself which half you were in." The silence after was heavier than the noise before. The day dragged them deeper. Simulated rescues, weighted carries across uneven ground, blindfolded navigation through darkened halls where gunfire erupted without warning. By evening, bodies moved on autopilot, shoulders sagged, faces hollowed, and still wasn't finished. "One last exercise," he said as the sun bled into the horizon. "Capture the package, opposing force inside, find it, secure it, extract." Sarah's team staggered forward. The facility ahead looked like nothing, an abandoned warehouse, windows dark, but she knew better. Inside, instructors waited, traps waited, pain waited. The team breached with controlled aggression. On point, sweeping corners, Sarah covering the rear. Shadows moved fast inside. Hostiles, aggressive, relentless. The fight blurred into flashes of light, the crack of simulation rounds, the shouts of commands barked over chaos. Sarah's sensor flashed once, grazed. Not dead. Not yet. She pressed harder, her body moving faster than her exhaustion allowed, her mind sharp where her muscles were dull. They found the package, a metal case tucked behind a barricade. Grabbed it and the team pivoted for. That's when the ambush hit. Round snapped. Went down. Williams shouted, dragging him clear even as his own sensor lit red. Two gone. Sarah surged forward, suppressing, her bursts controlled, her voice cutting through the noise. "Move, move." They crashed through a side exit, the case still in hand, bodies bruised but breathing. Outside waited, his face unreadable. "Debrief tomorrow," he said. "For now, chow and rack, you'll need it." That night, Sarah sat on the edge of her bunk long after lights out. Muscles throbbed. Her hands trembled faintly, not from fear, but from depletion. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet breathing of men who were supposed to be her teammates, some allies, some enemies, most undecided. Was she making progress? Was she breaking through the wall of doubt that surrounded her the moment she stepped off the truck? She thought of words, trust is everything. But trust couldn't be forced. It had to be earned, one choice at a time. And trust, she knew, could be broken in a single mistake. At 4:30, her eyes opened again before the alarm. She stretched in the dark, grounding herself in ritual, breath steady, body controlled. Footsteps approached, again coffee steaming in hand. His eyes found her in the dim light. "You don't stop, do you?" he asked quietly. "Not if I can help it," she replied. He nodded once, almost approving. "Good, because today will break some of them, maybe more than some." "What about me?" she asked before she could stop herself. He studied her, the pause long, deliberate. "That's up to you." He turned and left, his words echoing like a challenge she hadn't known she needed. The morning began with a surprise. Team assignments reshuffled. Sarah's name was called alongside again, plus, and 3 new faces. As they formed up, she caught a glance. Not hostile, not friendly, just watchful. "Your mission," Harrison announced, "is search and recovery, unknown hostile presence, possible civilian casualties, time pressure applies." Sarah felt the weight settle over her. Every mission blurred exhaustion with precision, pain with discipline. But this one would be different. She could sense it. The instructors didn't just want to see who could survive. They wanted to see who could lead when no one wanted to follow. And she knew the spotlight would find her again. Why was her name the one whispered again when the teams assembled? Sarah caught the glances as Harrison rattled off assignments. She felt the hesitation, the weight of every unspoken thought. Why her? Why is she still here? Even after victories, suspicion clung to her like shadow. Respect could be earned in seconds, but suspicion survived for weeks. Her team formed up, and 3 others, Murphy, and 7 men, 1 woman. A fragile mix of curiosity, resentment, and silence. Harrison's tone was sharp as steel. "Search and recovery, unknown hostiles, civilian lives at risk, time is against you. Fail the clock, you fail the mission. Fail to protect civilians, you fail the mission. Fail to function as a team," he let the pause drag, "and you don't belong here." The mock facility loomed ahead. 3 stories, broken windows, doors hanging crooked on hinges, shadows swallowing the interior. It looked like nothing but plywood and scaffolding, but Sarah knew it was more than that. Inside, chaos waited, designed with precision. They entered low, weapons raised, eyes scanning every angle. The first floor was a maze of hallways. Dust motes drifted in the slanted light. Somewhere deeper, a baby cried, a role player's detail meant to test instincts. "Clear left," Sarah whispered, moving with and took right. Murphy followed, their boots careful against the creaking floorboards. Voices rose ahead. 2 hostiles staged in a corner room, their weapons slung lazily as if waiting for the bait to be taken. Sarah raised her fist. The team froze. "Flank," she mouthed to. In seconds they executed, drawing attention with a burst through the doorway, Sarah slipping along the side, fast, decisive. She grabbed one wrist, twisted, slammed the rubber rifle against the wall. Controlled, precise. Within moments the room was theirs. No casualties, hostages untouched. But as the team regrouped, muttered under his breath just loud enough for her to hear. "Not bad for a girl." Her jaw tightened. She said nothing. Silence was survival sometimes. Words could ignite battles she didn't need yet. The second floor brought more chaos. Civilians scattered, role players screaming in feigned terror. Some clutched children, some begged, others froze in corners. And amid them, hostiles blended in, waiting to strike the moment hesitation cracked discipline. The team split to contain. Murphy shouted, "Clear, civilians moving," when suddenly gunfire cracked from a stairwell, went down, his sensor flashing red. "Contact left," roared. Sarah felt the adrenaline surge, the instinct to act fast without waiting. She moved, covering civilians, returning controlled fire her bursts deliberate. She saw drop low, dragging a child role player behind cover, his massive frame shielding them both. The firefight ended in under a minute, but the room looked torn apart. Civilians sobbing, role players clinging to realism, one teammate eliminated. 6 left. As they pushed toward the final floor, Sarah felt the tension rise. The enemy knew they were coming. The stairwell narrowed, a perfect choke point. She froze at the base, her hand raised. "They're waiting," she said softly. Frowned. "Of course they're waiting, that's the point." "Then we give them something they're not waiting for," Sarah replied. Her eyes scanned the structure. A side ladder bolted to the exterior wall, a fire escape half hidden by shadows. Options. "Split," she said. 2 through the stairs to draw fire, 4 outside, breach through windows. Scoffed. "That's suicide, splitting force." "Splits their attention," Sarah cut in. "It's not suicide if it's timed." The silence stretched, studied her face, weighing her certainty against his doubt. Then slowly he nodded. "Fine, I'll take the stairs." Sarah climbed the exterior with and Murphy. Every rung burned. Every breath felt like borrowed air. But when they reached the window, she heard the explosion of gunfire from below. Steam had triggered the ambush. "Now," Sarah hissed. They burst in through shattered glass. Chaos unfolded. Hostiles turned, stunned, caught in crossfire. Sarah's bursts were sharp, each shot deliberate, each movement drilled from years of repetition. Dropped one. Another. Murphy covered the hostages. Roared below, driving upward through the stairwell. And within moments, the third floor collapsed into silence. The hostages were secured. The mission was theirs. Outside, Harrison waited with Santos, clipboards in hand. Time met. Hostages secured. Casualties within acceptable limits, Harrison said flatly. Santos added, coordination was unconventional, risky, but effective. Sarah stood steady, chest heaving, sweat dripping, her weapon heavy in her hands. She glanced at who met her eyes for a long beat. Then he gave the smallest nod. Not friendship, not yet, but something else, recognition. The debrief dragged late into the night. The instructors dissected every movement, every hesitation, every burst of fire. Mistakes under fluorescent lights. Success reduced to lessons for improvement. By the time Sarah staggered to her bunk, her body ached in every muscle, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She lay down, but her mind refused to rest. She thought of eliminated early, barely given a chance to fight. She thought of muttered words. She thought of the civilians, the screams that felt too close to the ones she had heard in Afghanistan. And she thought of trust, fragile, uncertain, building in layers like sandbags before a flood. One misstep and it could all wash away. At 4:30 she was awake again, stretching in the quiet. Appeared once more, coffee in hand. His gaze lingered on her. "You don't look tired," he said. "I am," she admitted. "Good, means you're honest with yourself. Only fools pretend fatigue doesn't exist." He paused. "But you still showed up. That's what matters." He studied her another moment. "Keep this up, Martinez. Some of them are watching, waiting for you to fail, but some," he tilted his head, "are waiting for you to prove them wrong." Before she could answer, he was gone, his footsteps fading into the morning. That day's exercise was endurance in its form. Weighted carries across endless sand. Simulated casualty drags that tore at shoulders and lungs. Log PT in the cold surf. Salt water stinging eyes and burning throats as they heaved wood heavier than their own bodies. Sarah's muscles screamed. Her skin blistered. But she locked her jaw, focused on the rhythm of movement, the cadence of suffering. "Don't quit," she whispered under her breath. "Don't quit." Struggled beside her, the log slipping on his shoulder. He grunted, cursing. She shifted, bearing more of the weight without hesitation. He shot her a glance, surprised, maybe even humbled, but said nothing. Together they endured. when the day ended, gathered them all. His voice was rough, stripped of ceremony. Some of you are proving yourselves. Some are breaking. That's the way it is. But remember this, combat doesn't care about your pride, your past, or your excuses. It cares about whether you can stand when everything else falls. Sarah stood in the formation, battered, silent, her body trembling with fatigue. And inside she felt it, the line between weakness and strength wasn't where she once thought it was. It wasn't about size, or speed, or muscle. It was about something quieter, the refusal to quit when everything screamed to stop. And as the sun fell, she realized that was the strength they hadn't expected her to have.